Hello and welcome back to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a bold blend of coffee and movie review podcasting. My name is Nick Delaney and I'm your show host, coffee critic, film fanatic, and the guy who is ready to have a brat fall. Bumpin' that, bumpin' that, bumpin' that. In the words of Beyonce, this ain't Texas. However, for this episode, it actually is. Today, I'll be reviewing the Nitro Snap Chill from Proud Mary's Coffee, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and talking about my recent and disaster-prone trip out to Austin. Please saddle up, giddy up, and let's talk getting lightly hit by a car over some coffee. Huh? Yeah. But first, please be sure to follow at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok. There you can stay up to date on new releases, see coffee pictures that go along with each episode, get some quick movie thoughts from yours truly, and submit Dear Coffee Nick letters. Again, that's at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok. Everyone, hello and welcome back to the show. I am so excited to be starting with episodes again after taking a bit of a hiatus. Thank you for your patience. Please think of this as sort of like a season 2. I feel refreshed and ready to talk about more movies. I've thought about and looked at ways to improve the show and just make it a more enjoyable and cohesive experience. So I really can't wait for what's in store for the show. And once again, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who tuned into the Gretathon. I am so happy with how that series turned out, and I'm so happy to see it just now existing and living on the show. It was very important for me to make that, and I will always look back on the Gretathon very, very fondly. If the Gretathon is something that piques your interest, the whole series is streaming now on this show, so go check it out. Yes, it's been a while. It has been quite a while. I think it's been about a month since I released anything on here. So yes, thank you for your patience once again. But some general life updates, I guess. Number one, so work has been crazy and busy, but I officially launched a new podcast for my job, which has been really cool. And this is actually a video podcast, and the topic is politics. We're basically sitting down with people who work in Congress or even members of Congress, and we're just getting to know them outside of politics. So it's a really fun project. Even though it's a lot of work, I've been having a great time with it. And it's really been pushing my comfort level with podcasting, especially because it is a video podcast. I've been doing all the behind the scenes stuff for it. I'm not the host. I'm just doing the editing and the technical stuff. But that's been great, and it's a great experience. And hopefully doing that also improves my personal podcast as well. I won't say the name on here just because conflict of interest, and I don't want my personal podcast and the work podcast to be linked together. But if you do some researching, I'm sure you can find it somewhere, and I definitely encourage you to listen if you can find it. Another update, I am officially loving living in DC. I have talked about this on the show already, and the Gretathon was all recorded amidst me moving into this new city. But I had a very rough transition. Not very rough. It was just, it's hard moving to a new place for anyone. But I don't know. I think something about the fall weather and just getting to know people in the area a bit more. I am loving living here, and I'm very happy right now. So that has also in turn caused me to be ready to record more episodes. So that's been really great. I've been watching an absurd amount of movies. I've officially watched 50 new releases this year, so movies that were released in 2024, amongst many other movies that I've been catching up on, and that's been great. You can expect reviews for Joker Folie à Deux. You can expect reviews for The Substance, among many other films coming up, so be excited for that. And this is how I know that I've had time on my hands. I've actually gotten to watch TV shows, which I feel like is so rare for me, but I have been watching the new season of Heartstopper, and I have been crying very much at that show. As usual. It's one of my favorite shows out there. I've been rewatching Fleabag. I didn't think I could love it even more, but somehow I am. And I've been playing some video games, which has been really fun too. If you know me, you know I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan. So I have been thoroughly enjoying the new Legend of Zelda game, Echoes of Wisdom. It's so cute and it's so creative and fun. And I've gone through 2 dungeons already. And it's a good time. If you like that sort of like top-down Zelda style, definitely try this out. It's a bit different, which I think is really refreshing and fun. Also, during the Gretathon, I said I would start reading Little Women, and I am 100 pages in so far, so I feel very accomplished. And my last update is that I've seen 3 concerts in the past month, and each of them has changed my life in a different way. And I'm going to talk about the concerts on a later episode, except for one of them I'm going to talk about today. Another big update, I guess, is that I took a trip to Austin, Texas for one of the concerts. So that was a really cool experience. I just traveled by myself and I explored the city, and I'm going to talk about all of this in my coffee thought, but that was a great experience. Even despite the crazy things that happened to me, which I'll get to. So lots of exciting things in the past month. I've been having a great time, and I hope you all have been having a really great time too. Anyways, that's enough yapping. Long story short, I am excited and relieved to get back into our regularly scheduled programming. Yeah. So, getting right into that, I think it's time for our Now Brewing segment. Now Brewing is a luxury coffee discussion and review. Now Brewing in today's episode is the Nitro Snap Chill from Proud Mary Coffee in Austin, Texas. Yes, like I said, I traveled to Texas and I tried a lot of different coffee places while I was there. So although I'm no longer in Texas, these first few episodes coming back from the hiatus, they will all be reviewing different Texas coffee shops. Now, Proud Mary Coffee. I have a lot to say about this coffee experience as a whole. But like I said, I'm going to save the details for the coffee thought. So stay tuned for that. But I want to start by getting into the coffee shop itself. Proud Mary Coffee was founded by a husband and wife in 2009 in Melbourne, Australia. Proud Mary Coffee states that their mission is to, quote, improve the start to your day so dramatically that it's impossible to go back to the way things used to be, end quote. I love that. I love that. That is such a good mission. When I was a morning barista, opening barista, and a barista trainer, one thing that I was really serious about was that the first few people you interact with in any given day, they set the tone for the rest of your day. And I like that Proud Mary Coffee takes this to the next level where they're like, we want our service and our coffee to be so good that it just makes your day irreversibly good. Like there's nothing that could go bad about it. Like you just feel that good about your day. I think that's really cool. And I love that. And that's one thing I love about coffee. I know I say that my favorite thing about coffee is that you can share it with people and connect with people over it. But another thing is that it just sets a good tone for your day. Like it just calms you, it relaxes you, and it makes you ready to tackle what the day has in store for you. I was really excited to try this place too. Their only locations in the US are a location in Portland, Oregon, and then this Austin location. And then you can go to Australia and try it in Melbourne if you'd like. But I think most of my audience is located in the US. I know a few people in Australia. Shout out if you're listening. But yeah, this is a very not common coffee chain. So if you see it, if you're nearby it, definitely try it out. Another thing about Proud Mary Coffee is that they use only fresh, healthy, sustainable, ethically and locally sourced produce and high quality coffee direct from origin. So they are really serious about fighting for more equitable practices and greater appreciation in the coffee space industry. So gold stars for them on being really serious about this. I think that it's really important for coffee chains to be responsible and to be sustainable. So I really appreciate every time I go to a website and I see that they put this at the very top, that they are serious about ethically, locally sourced produce and coffee direct from origin. It's very important to look out for these things when you are reviewing coffee or even just drinking coffee. Now, getting more specific here, this Austin location is absolutely beautiful. It's so beautiful. The first thing that greets you when you go to this store or this cafe are the doors, obviously. And just a little minor detail that I love is that the door handles are espresso portafilters. So I don't know if everyone knows portafilter, the term, but it's basically like the thing you twist on an espresso machine that holds the grounds. The door handles are just giant portafilters, and I think that's so cool. But the inside of the cafe has very high ceilings. There is a lot of greenery, and the staff there, they are just so outstanding, and they're very happy to give recommendations. They were just like really nice. I really appreciated that, especially traveling alone. All right, hitting their food first, I got the tropical overnight oats. I really before this never had overnight oats, so this was new for me. So the tropical overnight oats is rolled oat and sesame bircher, roasted pineapple, kiwi, and green mango salad, coconut yogurt, pandan oil, don't know what that is, and almond milk. Visually, this dish looked not appetizing. You know, it's how you would imagine overnight oats to be, which overnight oats, it's not very visually appealing to begin with. But then this also had like this green liquid all over it. It was like a green slime almost. So not very like visually appealing, but it did look very unique. However, once you try it, this was so good. This was just so delicious. And I have been thinking about this dish ever since I had it. And it's been about a month. It's been a month since I tried this place. But I have been thinking about it ever since. This dish was just so refreshing. It was so delicious. And it makes me feel so healthy and so full but energized. Oh, gosh, I wish I could have this again. It was just incredible. And if I'm ever in Austin again, I'm going here and I'm getting this dish again. Now, for the coffee, I got the Nitro Snap Chill, which it's basically just a nitro cold brew. The coffee is sourced from Ethiopia, and it has notes of apricot and milk chocolate. And right away, this is the best nitro that I've ever had. This was so good. And Proud Mary Coffee did it so right. When I get a nitro cold brew, I want it to be cold without ice. I want it to have a thick layer of foam on top. And I want it to be really smooth. They hit all those marks. This had a really, like if you think about beer almost. I actually sent this to some of my friends and they thought it was beer. It had a thick layer of foam on top. It was incredibly smooth to drink, and it was creamy without any cream in it. And the roast was paired so nicely with this brewing method. Usually for a nitro cold brew, you get like a super bold coffee, but this one was a bit lighter and less acidic, and you can actually like decipher the apricot and the milk chocolate notes, which for a lot of coffee, you usually can't tell what the notes are. But this one, the flavors came through so clearly, and this just felt like such a clean cup of coffee. And it was just beautifully crafted and beautifully brewed. Just A+ nitro cold brew. This is like now my gold standard for getting nitro cold brews is this. So my rating for Proud Mary Coffee, I am going to give them the Nick Pick. Proud Mary Coffee is a gem of a cafe that truly and deeply cares about the quality and experience of their products. And you can tell. The cafe staff is incredibly kind and helpful. The food and drink was delicious, and the atmosphere of the cafe was gorgeous. I am really sad that there's so few locations, but also that's probably what makes it so good, is that they're so focused on just creating great products at these few stores. So the next time I visit Austin or Australia or Portland, I am definitely going to check this out again and try more things from here. And if you're ever in any of those areas, absolutely, hands down, make the trip out to Proud Mary Coffee. Okay, now that we have our coffee in hand, it's time for our next segment, the Coffee Thought. The Coffee Thought is an outlet dedicated to voice my many incoherent thoughts over a lovely cup of coffee. So our coffee thought for today is going to be talking about my Austin trip in a little bit more detail. So like I said, I made the trip out to Austin for a concert, and I had this planned out for a few months before going on the trip. The concert was for Mitski's tour. Mitski is an alternative singer. She's most famous for her songs Washing Machine Heart, Nobody, and My Love All Mine. She's one of my favorite artists of all time. And she went to the DMV area, so why didn't I see her there, you ask? This show in Austin, the opener was Ethel Cain. Ethel Cain is known for her album Preacher's Daughter, one of my favorite albums of all time, and Ethel Cain is one of my favorite artists of all time. Paired with Mitski, another one of my favorites. So I thought that these two artists performing together, it was worth the trip out. And I was like, since I'm going to be going out all the way to Austin, Texas, why not make a little weekend trip out of it? And yeah, I traveled alone, and I thought it was really nourishing. I thought it was very refreshing. I'm definitely an introvert, which I know is surprising coming from a guy who has a podcast and does nothing but talk to himself for 45 minutes every episode. But I am an introvert, so getting to go someplace new by myself was really refreshing, and it was really fun. And I, go on trips a lot, but this one felt truly refreshing, and I felt like after this trip, my cup was filled. Like I had the energy to do more things after this, and I felt like I truly got the time to relax and learn more about myself and also, a new place. So it was really fun. I just kind of got to go and do my own thing, which was really nice. Now, I'll talk about the Mitski and Ethel Cain concert now while I'm here, I guess. It was really great. Both of them are some of the best performers I have seen in my whole life in their own ways. For Mitski, her whole show was choreographed with like this abstract dancing, this interpretive dancing. And she was just barreling across the stage and doing these weird movements. And sometimes it would just be with her hands and sometimes her whole body. And everything was very interpretive. And at the same time, she just delivered amazing vocals, of course. And her set design was just really beautiful. She also sort of remixed some of the songs. I don't know if remix is the right word, but she gave them more of like a country spin sometimes or a folksy spin. And made it different than the studio version, which I really appreciate that when an artist gives you a different experience than you would hear if you just like listened on Spotify or something. It makes the live show worth something completely different. It's a completely different experience. So that was an amazing performance. And then Ethel Cain, she was just an outstanding performance in a completely different way. She very much walked out onto the stage and just stood in the same spot for most of the set. And I don't think I've ever seen an artist just walk out and stand in one spot for the whole set, but she made it work, which I never would have imagined an artist could do that for me. But she just stood there and delivered such an emotional and gripping and powerful performance that's all she needed to do and more, was to just go out there and sing. And, you can hear this on the studio version of her album, Preacher's Daughter. You can hear these incredible vocals, but the way the live vocals were just so unhinged and unrestrained. It was so powerful and it was so moving. Ethel Cain she is such a visionary, and she is like one of the greatest artists of all time. But other than that, I did just a lot of fun stuff. I toured the Texas State Capitol, which, I live in DC and I see the Capitol all the time. The Texas State Capitol, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's giving the nation's capital some competition. Like, that was a very impressive state capital. What else did I do? I went to Zilker National Park. I went to the Zilker Botanical Gardens. I tried a bunch of different foods. I, of course, had like tacos every single day. I had breakfast tacos. I tried a lot of different coffees. I tried the barbecue, of course, and the brisket was really, really good. One of my favorite things that I did. So Texas has this bridge. I forget the name of the bridge. I think it's the South Capitol Bridge. But basically, there are like in the fall, or I guess the spring to the fall, there are hundreds of millions of bats that go into the bridge to sleep. So at nighttime or at sunset, I guess, you can go out on the water and take a boat tour, and you can watch these hundreds of millions of bats emerge from this bridge and see all of them like swarming out. And it's so cool. So I took one of those tours and I got to watch the bats emerge from the bridge. And it's just really cool to like learn about the bats. And also you learned a lot of like the city's history as you were taking the tour. So I guess getting into the drama of this trip, it all happened the day after the concert. And that day happened to be Friday the 13th. All of this happened on Friday the 13th. So I woke up that day after the concert, and I knew that I wanted to try Proud Mary coffee. So Proud Mary coffee is sort of like across Lady Bird Lake. I was staying in downtown in a hostel, which I guess I can talk about that later. But I was staying at a hostel in downtown. So across the lake and then into like South Austin, that's pretty far to walk. You know, I didn't get a rental car or anything. I was just walking to everywhere I wanted to go to. So I was like, okay, I looked it up and it was like an hour to walk to this coffee place. And I was like, that's a little bit too much. So I was like, why don't I rent like a Lime scooter? So I got a Lime scooter and, you know, I made it across the lake and I was in South Austin now. South Austin is like no longer downtown city. You're kind of getting a little bit more residential, I guess, and suburby. There's still very much like a city element out there, but there's no bike lanes out on these roads in South Austin. So I was like, hell no, I'm not riding the scooter in the street. I was like, I'm going to go on the sidewalk, which I don't know. That just makes sense to me. I feel like I'm less likely to get hit on the sidewalk than in the street. So I get on the sidewalk and I'm like trailing away, listening to whatever Ethel song. And the Lime scooter, it goes pretty fast. And of course I'm speeding on it because it feels nice to have the breeze and everything. Austin was really hot. And I am like on the sidewalk and there's like this driveway coming out from like an apartment building. And at the corner of the driveway and me on the sidewalk is this really large, like palmy shrub sort of thing. And, you know, it's huge. It's completely blocking my view from whatever's coming up on the driveway. And it's completely blocking whoever's on the driveway, their view of what's coming on the sidewalk, especially if it's something very fast. You can see where this is going. So I'm zooming along the sidewalk and I get up to the driveway and this lady in a Porsche is like speeding out of the driveway and she hits me. But it is a very, very light hit. And I think all I said, I didn't scream. I was just like, shit. I just yelled shit. And it happened very slowly. So I basically like hopped off the Lime scooter because I feel like it's better to jump up when you're getting hit than to like risk falling under the car. So I hopped up on the hood of her Porsche and I was just kind of like halfway sitting there, halfway still standing on the sidewalk. Because like I said, it happened very slowly. So it wasn't like full impact or anything. But she basically like tapped me and knocked me off my feet. She got out of the car and she was like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you coming. She got out and then these people like driving on the side of the road, they pulled up and they were like, oh my God, she totally hit you. Like, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. Like, do you need us to be a witness? Are we going to call the cops? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, they just got out of the car and like were immediately backing me up. And I was like, oh, like, thank you, but I'm fine. I'm fine. She got out of her car and she was like, oh my gosh, are you sure you're okay? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I mean, you didn't see me coming. I understand. Like that huge shrub is right there. You didn't see me. It's okay. And she's just like, oh my gosh, as long as you're sure you're okay, I'm so sorry. And I was like, yeah, let's not worry about it. Yeah, have a good day. Like, don't let this affect you. It's okay. I'm fine. I was fine. Like, I was not hurt at all. It was such a light tap. It was just like enough to slightly knock me on my feet and onto the hood of the car. But I also jumped up myself onto the hood of the car to avoid like really getting hurt. So I got back on my Lime scooter and I went the rest of the way to Proud Mary Coffee. So it was a bit of a traumatic journey getting to Proud Mary Coffee, but as seen in my review, I think it was all worth it. It was worth getting hit by a car for Proud Mary Coffee. So if that says anything about the quality of their coffee, yeah. That wasn't it. The second event, so later that day, I went to Zilker Park, and I think that's where they have Austin City Limits. It's this huge park in South Austin, so nearby where I was, and you get a really good view of the city skyline. So I was walking around the park, and there's this really large open field where you get this really good shot of the city skyline. So I was doing like this little artsy photo moment, and I got down on my stomach, and I was laying in the grass, and I like propped my phone up so that the grass was sort of in the way of the city skyline, like it was like a depth of field shot, I guess, to put it in film terms. The grass was like in the foreground, and then the city skyline was in the background. It was a really cool shot. And I was taking the picture laying down in the grass, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, why are my arms like on fire right now? I look down. I am covered in what must be hundreds, if not thousands, of red ants. Like I was covered so badly that I could not even see my skin on my arms. Like I was being attacked. I was under attack. I got up. This time I was screaming. This time I didn't just say shit. I was screaming because I've never gotten bitten by fire ants before. So I got up and I was like trying to brush them off, but like they were caught in my arm hair. I have very hairy arms. For those of you who have not seen my arms before, they were caught in like my arm hair, and I was trying to brush them off, and I just got bitten all over. It was so bad. And of course, I've never gotten bitten by a fire ant before. So the first thing I do is I Google, like, what should I do? Like, do I have to go to the hospital, or does it just kind of go away? Is it like a mosquito bite? What's the deal here? And I look it up, and of course it's like, yeah, you'll be fine. But like, if you're allergic to ant bites, you're going to die. And like, you should go to the emergency room. And I was like, fuck, I've never gotten bitten by an ant. How do I know if I'm allergic or not? And I was like, okay, so I'm going to die. This is like my final moments is right here at Zilker Park. But it said to like wash off the area of the bites with like soap and water to prevent infection. So I was like, okay, so let's like wait this out to see if like I have an allergic reaction, because I think I'll be able to tell if I do. So I walked over to the botanical gardens, and I told the guy at the front, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got bitten by fire ants. Do you think I'm going to be okay? He was like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. Just like go to the bathroom and wash off. So thank you to that guy for being like my emotional support when I was all alone. And I was fine after that. My arms were like burning so badly and in so much pain for maybe the next hour or so. So I just walked around the botanical gardens and kind of like calmed down. And afterwards I stopped at Choi's and I got a mojito, which I think helped like calm my body down a bit. And that was like the best mojito I've ever had. That was really good. What else did I have for my Texas trip? Oh yeah, the hostel. So I stayed in a hostel since I'm balling on a budget right now. And it was a really cool experience. What I paid for 3 nights at this hostel would have been what I paid for 1 night at a normal hotel. So I'm really glad that I chose to go in a hostel. And also, this hostel was located right in the heart of downtown Austin. So I was located in walking distance to literally, or mostly everything I wanted to do, which is really good. So I think it was definitely worth it staying at a hostel. If you are looking to stay in Austin or really any city, definitely look at hostels. You're on a budget and everything, because that might be a good option for you. But that was really cool. I was expecting to kind of like socialize with the other people staying there more, but the vibe of the people at this hostel, like everyone was sort of keeping to themselves. And that's okay. I still had a good time having sort of a solo trip. But yeah, it was definitely interesting, and I'm glad I did it. If you ever want to go somewhere and like you don't have someone to go with, just go. Just go by yourself. Don't wait for someone else to want to go with you to do what you want to do. And I've said this about movies before. I go to the movies by myself all the time. And that's because I see so many movies that come out. But also, if I know I want to see something, I'm not going to wait for someone else to go see it. And sure, like if I have company, that's wonderful. And that makes the experience, completely different. But if you know you want to do something, go do it and don't wait for someone else, because that experience might pass by. If you want to see that movie, don't wait on it because, it might not be showing in theaters next week. Just go do it. So yeah, that's the moral of the story here. Let's talk about movies. Okay. Now showing is our feature ideological analysis and critical film review segment by yours truly. Now showing in today's episode is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the 1974 cult classic film directed by Tobe Hooper and starring Marilyn Burns. The film follows a group of 5 young friends road tripping in rural Texas who encounter the bloodthirsty, mad killer known as Leatherface. And, well, the title pretty much tells you what happens here. This movie, I cannot believe I waited this long to watch it. And I think that's because no one was telling me just how important and how great this movie was. So that's why I'm making this review, is because I want to be here to tell you, if you haven't watched this movie, I want to be the one to tell you, go watch it. Go watch this movie. This movie is so good. It's so ahead of its time. And it's so influential for every horror movie to come after it. This is a must watch. So the first thing I want to touch on is just how influential this movie is. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, there's probably a remake out there somewhere. Actually, no, there is. There's one on Netflix. This original is the blueprint for so many horror films to come after it. Maybe even every horror movie that comes after this is somehow influenced by this. But to reiterate, this movie was made in 1974. This is very early on. And horror movies to this day are still recycling the same ideas from this movie. Just to name off the top of my head, X, Barbarian, really any slasher movie, Resident Evil 7, Dead by Daylight, American Horror Story. All of these movies, video games, TV shows, whatever, they pull so much from this singular movie. Watching this, I was like, oh, like this is the blueprint. This is the one. This just created so many of the popular ideas that we see, not just in slasher, but in the genre of horror as a whole. This is the one. This is the one. The opening to this movie is brilliant. It starts off with kind of like, the film you are about to see is horrifying, grotesque, and deranged. And I love that vibe. It's corny, but I love it. But then it opens with, I guess, one of the murders that we're looking at. And it's like just horrible, and it's grotesque, and it's bloody. It's like this corpse. And it sets the tone perfectly for like what we are about to watch. And this reminded me a lot of X. X is one of my favorite movies. And the movie starts with sort of the results of what happens. It starts with kind of like the massacre itself. You just see in X, you see like the bloody house and the rotting corpses everywhere. It's very gory and it's very like gnarly and everything. So I could see, the inspirations that X took from this movie when I watched this. So that was really cool. And it's really one really cool thing about going back and watching older movies is you can see like, oh my gosh, like my favorite movie drew inspirations from this. So that was really cool. And I think that's why I liked this movie so much, is because you can kind of see where every other horror movie pulls from. It's just very cool. So everything in this film leads up to the discovery of Leatherface's house by the main group of characters. But earlier on in the film, the characters sort of meet this unrelated, at the time, hitchhiker. And this hitchhiker is a precursor to sort of all the horrible things that happens to this group of friends. He sets this unsettling tone for the rest of the movie. So they pick up this hitchhiker and he's doing like all these crazy things in the car and he ends up like really hurting one of the friends. And this, I think, sets the tone of unsettlement very well. Basically, I think one of the most unsettling things about not only the hitchhiker, but Leatherface and sort of the other things we see later in the movie is that these are people acting outside the bounds of humanity. And I think this is what makes the horror here so effective. These people, these humans, are acting animalistic, yet they still practice some human culture and some human norms. So one example I think of is the family at the dinner table. Like, yes, the family is coming together to have dinner together, but something is very off. This is not normal. There is the grandpa sitting at the dinner table who looks like just a rotting corpse. Like, he does not look like he should be alive. Then there's Leatherface who's sitting at the dinner table, and he is sort of playing the part of the mother. He has makeup on his mask, which is just very off-putting. And then they're all sort of eating like this rotting food that we can assume is human remains. We don't know for sure, though. And they're all just sort of sitting there and like not eating. It's like they're almost playing pretend. So there's everything here is just very unsettling and very off-putting. And I think they achieved that by having something be human, but not quite. It's sort of like that uncanny valley. I think that this movie does so well. Another thing that this movie does that I think is really effective is the movie just feels dirty. It feels really grungy. And a lot of people say about this movie is that you cannot eat anything while you watch it. And I ate like my dinner while I watched this, and I was fine. But a lot of people are like, this is the movie they cannot eat while they watch it. And I think that's pretty accurate. But I think that's achieved by the set design here and the costume design. So the set design, one example I think of is Leatherface's house. It is just disgusting. One of the rooms in Leatherface's house, I think it's like the living room, is just, you can't even see the floor. It's like piled up with like dust and feathers and all these human remains and these bones. And there's like these rotting skulls everywhere. And they made like the sofa is made out of like human bones and skeletons. And they have like a wind chime that's made out of bones. Like, it is just nasty. And one of the characters like runs into the living room and she trips and she falls down face first into like all the dust and feathers and dirt. And it's just so disgusting. And, this dirty, like disgusting environment contributes to this unsettling feeling. And this movie just feels so wrong. And it's just so effective. So I think the set design here is one way to communicate this, but also the costume design. These characters, especially like you start off with the hitchhiker. The hitchhiker feels just very dirty and very like unwashed. He pulls out a knife and he hurts one of the friends, and the knife itself is like dirty and it's rusty and everything. So it adds to the horror of like what's happening. It's like, not only is this person getting cut by a knife, but it's like a rusty, dirty knife. It's just disgusting. It's so bad. And then, of course, the costume design, these people, they look really dirty, and Leatherface is just horrifying to look at. He has this mask made out of like human flesh and, this sort of nasty hair. And he has like this butcher outfit on. And then at the dinner scene, he has like makeup on his mask, almost like he's putting a facade on top of his one facade, which you're Leatherface, getting off topic, I guess. Leatherface is just like furthering and furthering himself away from humanity. He's wearing one mask and you're like, oh my God, what is he hiding underneath his mask? And then he puts on the makeup and you're like, oh my God, well, what's he hiding underneath the mask? He's hiding underneath another mask. So it's just humans that are furthering themselves away from their humanity makes it so terrifying. And I love that it's not revealed. Like, you don't see what's hiding underneath the mask here. Everything is left to your imagination, at least with Leatherface, which makes it all the more scary, of course. Hands down, my favorite scene from this movie is the dinner scene. The dinner scene goes on what feels like forever, and that's in a good way and a bad way. A good way because this scene is just so interesting and so much happens. In a bad way because it's so goddamn uncomfortable. But it goes on forever, and it's just so horrible. It's really disorienting, and the filmmaker here just goes to such extremes. The filmmaker, whoever made this scene, just was not afraid to try just ridiculous things. Leatherface just shows up inexplicably with makeup on. We don't know why, but just the fact that it's there and it's unexplained makes it so weird and disorienting. And then the grandpa shows up, and we see the grandpa earlier on in the film. The final girl, basically Sally, she runs through a room, and we see the grandpa there sitting with a dead corpse. And I assumed that the grandpa was also a dead corpse because he looks like it. But the grandpa's at the dinner table, and I'm like, okay, so they rolled up this dead corpse to the dinner table, which reminded me of Pearl. And I was like, okay, crazy, but not the craziest I've seen. And one of the family members goes up to the final girl and like cuts her finger. And they're like, Grandpa, it's your time to eat, Grandpa. Are you thirsty? And they like hold her finger out to the grandpa's mouth, and he starts moving. That was the biggest mind fuck for me. I was like, oh my God, the grandpa isn't dead. And he's like sort of like twitching and like sticking out his tongue, trying to like lick up this girl's blood. So disgusting and so terrifying, but I was eating this up. Like, this is just horror gold. Like, this is what I signed up for. Like, this is disturbing. This is disgusting, but oh my God, like it's too good. Like, ugh. But the grandpa, he was just one of my favorite characters, I think. And I know that sounds weird, but he was just so funny. And like, they were like at the dinner table, like all trying to take turns at like killing the girl. And they're like, Grandpa, you try and kill her first. And they had the girl like over this bucket, and they were trying to get the grandpa to like swing a big hammer at the girl's head, like a club. And so we go back to the club, for those of you who have watched Megalopolis. And they're trying to like swing this club, but the grandpa is like so old and weak that the club is too heavy for him, and he keeps missing the girl's head. And he tries like 10 times and he keeps missing. And they're like, you got it, Grandpa. Keep trying, keep trying. It's ridiculous, but it's so funny. And it's also, yeah, it's horrifying. I just loved this sequence. It was so good. And then after this scene, we have the huge extended chase scene with the titular aforementioned chainsaw. And I loved it. I loved how long this chase scene lasted for. It really like amplified the stakes of the movie, I think. And it kind of made it uncertain to me. I was like, does the girl make it? Like, I'm confused. Like, maybe she doesn't make it. And I'm not going to say whether she does or not if you haven't seen this movie before. But I just love that, like, they really like took their time with it, and they really, played it out and really set the scene here. But this movie did such an excellent job balancing classic horror campiness with truly scary imagery. All of this is real, or it feels real. Like, all of this could happen. Nothing here feels like make-believe or untrue. Like, I don't know, like if I was road tripping through middle of nowhere, Texas, sure, maybe this could happen. I don't know. And I think that's what makes it truly terrifying. I think the one thing I don't like about this movie is that the characters were just a bit annoying. And I think that's realistic, especially like these characters were all young people. And, considering that this was like a very different time period, but it was really just one character that was doing it. And I guess he was sort of like nerdy. So I'll let it pass. But yeah, this movie, like I said, is so influential. And this is the blueprint to many, if not all, horror movies that come after. I will think about this movie for a very long time, and I can't wait to watch it again. The dinner scene, the chase scene, so good. And just this movie is so unsettling and so unnerving. I just love it. With all of that said, I'm going to give this movie the Nick pick. I'm ashamed to be coming to this realization so late, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the blueprint for the vast majority of horror movies that follow after it. This film balances being deeply unsettling with being campy, with being artistic. The visuals of this film are beautiful and ahead of their time. The horror elements are truly nerve-wracking, and the final act is simply unforgettable. This is a new personal favorite for so many reasons, and if you even remotely like horror, you need to make sure you've seen this. Go watch it. It is streaming on Amazon Prime Video, so go check it out. All right, for our next segment, this is Dear Coffee Nick, and in this segment, I'll be reading some letters from fellow coffee and movie enjoyers about their own coffee and movie opinions, reviews, thoughts, hot takes, or whatever. So we have 2 letters to discuss today, one of which will be a little short, and I'll start with that one. So this one is from Gabe. Hi, Gabe. I hope you're doing well, and I miss you. Gabe said, I just watched Gone Girl. Thoughts on it? I don't remember if you talked about it. This might be embarrassing, but I don't know if it is or not. I have not seen Gone Girl, but I have heard so much about it, and I know it has a huge twist. And it's one of those movies where I have managed all this time to not have the twist spoiled for me. So I'm very excited to watch it one day, but yeah, I haven't seen it. I'm curious to hear what you think about it. So once I do watch it, I'm going to go to you and get your thoughts on it. But thank you for sending that in. I will move that up on my list of movies I need to watch. And this next one, which I'm going to go into a long tangent about, I think. This next one is from Mark. Hello, Mark. I hope you're doing well. I hope law school is going well. Mark says, Arrival is a top-tier movie that I don't hear talked about enough. Mark, Arrival is one of my favorite movies of all time, hands down. Like, that's maybe in my top 10 movies ever. I love Arrival. Amy Adams in Arrival. This is one of my favorite performances of all time. And there's one moment towards the end. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you know, you know, where Amy Adams says, I can't even say it, but her line delivery in this one moment when you're at the twist is so good and so effective. And I think if it were delivered any other way, it would be less effective. And I think that this movie's approach to just depicting aliens is so unique because these aliens are sort of like just completely not humanoid. But these were like, they communicated in a way that was just beyond anything comprehensible. Their language was not spoken, but it was written out. It's just so interesting. And of course, the soundtrack is incredible for this movie. And of course, the vision behind this movie is incredible because the director is Denis Villeneuve, who I've talked about at length on this podcast. Denis Villeneuve is an auteur. He is a visionary and one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. But I'm so glad he made this movie. Arrival, I actually used Arrival in one of my linguistics classes. Amy Adams' character in Arrival is a linguistics professor, and she's tasked with translating this alien language. So I liked that the movie sort of used linguistics to describe something alien. I thought that was really cool. So I wrote a paper about Arrival in one of my linguistics classes, and I really enjoyed that project. But yeah, Arrival is not talked about enough. And yeah, Mark, you're totally right. I'm 100% with you. I could watch Arrival a million times. In fact, I might watch that after this. Such a good movie. If you've not seen that, go watch that as soon as possible. So good. Oh my gosh, the time has flown by. I think that's enough for today. But thank you, Gabe, and thank you, Mark, for sending in letters. If you would like to send in a letter, please feel free to write Dear Coffee Nick through DM on social media or email coffeenicksmoviepics@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Like I said, I'm very excited to be making episodes again and to get into our regularly scheduled programming. Coming up, I will have reviews for The Substance and Joker Folie à Deux, as well as many other reviews. Also, I think I'm going to do a Christmas special, so stay tuned for that. If you like what you heard, please be sure to give the show a 5-star rating and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow the show's accounts on social media and share the show with your friends. I would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, entitles me? Yes. Entitles me? Yes. Entitles me? Yes. So go back to the club. Thanks again for listening to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Our opening theme is The Moondrops, and our closing theme is March of the Hares, both songs by Nathan Moore. Before you go, please be sure to follow the show on social media at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok, and give the show the Nick Pick by rating it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks again, and see you next time.